Hey, what's going on, guys? For today's video, we're going to be ranking all of Bandai's perfect grade Gunpla. Now, there are a couple of perfect grades which are not Gunpla, like the Millennium Falcon and the Evangelion. We're not going to be including those in today's tier list ranking. We're also not going to be including any Gundam-based exclusives or premium Bandai releases, so that gives us a nice, clean 20 releases to go through here today, capped on both ends very nicely with the RX-78-2, with the first perfect grade Gunpla release being the original RX-78-2, and the last, at the moment of releasing this video, being the perfect grade Unleashed RX-78-2 Gundam, with the perfect grade Unleashed New Gundam on the way. This gives us, as I said, 20 releases that we're going to be going through. Now, why make this list? Well, actually, even though the perfect grade line is, relatively limited in terms of the number of releases that we have here, it is a line that I do get asked about a lot. People often ask me what is the best perfect grade kit, what perfect grade kit would I recommend, and I think there's this common thought among a lot of Gunpla builders that perfect grade is kind of like the pinnacle of Gunpla. These are like the best, the most awesome model kits that are out there, and a lot of perfect grade kits are really nice, but I think that just because they're large and more expensive doesn't necessarily mean that these are some of the best kits around. And so one of the things that I want to go through in today, aside from just kind of giving them an arbitrary ranking here that we're going to be doing on our tier list, which is not anything too scientific. A lot of these kits I've actually not built, but I know a lot about them. So, take this ranking with a grain of salt. It's not super serious, but my other goal for this video is to talk about some alternatives. So maybe the perfect grade version of the Zeta Gundam is not necessarily the best version of the Zeta Gundam that you can get. So if you really, really love the Zeta Gundam and you think, I want to get the perfect grade someday, maybe another version might be more ideal for you, for example. So the other thing I would just say, kind of, especially to those of you guys who may be relatively new to the hobby, is that perfect grade is not something that you have to kind of work your way up to. If you've built like a couple of high grade kits and you think, I'm not ready for a perfect grade, I would say you're absolutely ready for a perfect grade. You could build a perfect grade as your very first kit ever. It's not anything more complex or more difficult than any other model kit. It's just more parts, and so it's going to take you more time, sure, maybe, but it's not anything particularly too difficult for you. So whatever skill level you think you're at, you can absolutely handle building a perfect grade. Some of them are definitely objectively and subjectively better than others, I would say. So let's go ahead and get into our list. Starting off with the RX-78-2 Gundam, released in 1998 for 12,000 yen. Now I'm going to talk about the release dates and the prices for some of these. I'll have it on the screen as well, but it's not entirely relevant for most releases, so I may not really mention it. But just to talk about a couple of the quick pros and cons of this kit, really kind of set the standard for a lot of, especially what the first handful of releases were for the perfect grade line, with some of the key gimmicks being like open hatch gimmicks, a lot of detail and a lot of complexity, especially on the inner frame, because one of the biggest cons, I would say, for the original RX-72 Gundam is that it has like virtually no detail on the exterior. So that's just an aesthetic choice that you may or may not like, but I would say if you think of perfect grade as something that has a lot of detail, the RX-78-2 certainly does not, especially on the outside, although with the hatches open, you can certainly appreciate a lot of the detail that is on the inside of this. So I'm gonna put the Gundam here kind of right in the middle at a B. It's still serviceable, and it's not going to be anything too flashy, but if you're a fan of the RX-78-2, of course, it's a pretty nice looking model, but it doesn't quite have as much detail. And that said, of course, with it being the original Gundam, there's a lot of other great options for you, kind of depending on whatever you're looking for. If you want a more detailed kit in 1/60 scale, of course, we have the perfect grade Unleashed, which we'll make our way to here. There is also the mega size kit, which has a lot of detail, but it also has a lot of seam lines, but it's a big, very detailed kit of the RX-78-2, if that's something that you're looking for. If you just want like my personal opinion on probably what is the best overall version of the RX-78-2, I would say it's probably somewhere amongst the Master Grade 2.0, the Master Grade 3.0, and the Master Grade the Origin version. They're all fantastic kits, just basically differ in just the overall kind of aesthetics of the design. Also, I would say the Real Grade 2.0, also absolutely fantastic kit, of course, just has, again, a little bit different look aesthetically to it. But if you're not a fan of 1/44 scale, you wanted something in 1/100 scale, you have a couple of really great options there. So moving on to the Zakus then, the mass production type green Zaku is in fact the only mass production mobile suit that we have in the entirety of the perfect grade line, so it's kind of special just for that. But that said, one of the things that I've just never really been a fan of with the perfect grade Zaku kit is, number one, the proportions, which is subjective. You may like it, you may not. Also, it has kind of like the worst seam lines. It's got some really bad seam lines like right front and center on the front of the legs, the front of the arms. And so, I mean, as far as perfect grades go, this is probably one that's going to take the most amount of work if you're planning on actually like painting the kit. So for that reason, and plus the fact that it doesn't come with the bazooka, which I find kind of disappointing, I'm gonna put this this down below the Gundam at C tier. There's a lot of other better options for Zaku kits. You have basically any of the HG, the Origin Zaku kits are fantastic. You have the HG Revive Zaku kits, which are fantastic. Any of the Master Grade 2.0 Zaku kits are fantastic, even though those are getting pretty up there in age now, but they still hold up really, really well. And then again, if you did want something really big and really detailed, you have the Mega Size kit available as well, and that kind of goes for both. So moving on to Char Zaku then. Char Zaku unfortunately doesn't really offer much more. It still doesn't come with a bazooka, which is disappointing, and it does come with some different parts for the backpack and the back of the legs. Otherwise, it's pretty much just a color swap. There's not really going to be anything that this offers that the mass production type doesn't, unless you just wanted the Char's version, so that one's going to go right next to its brother there in the C tier. And again, as far as other options for that, like I said, the Master Grade 2.0 kit, any of the HG kits, you know, other than like the old HG UC kit, you have a lot of great options there. Now moving on to the Zeta Gundam. The Zeta Gundam is one that you have a lot of options available to you, and they all kind of have their own pros and cons, absolutely. So as far as the perfect grade goes, it's the first and still the only fully transforming perfect grade, so that's going to add a lot of complexity and a lot of weight to the kit, which is going to make it heavy. So it is going to be nicely posable, but one thing that you're going to struggle with probably with this kit is just the overall weight of it, also the aesthetics. So if you look at different versions of the Zeta Gundam over the years, especially in the Master Grade line, is a really good representation of this, from the 1.0 to the 2.0 to the Verka. The Zeta Gundam gets a lot of different variety, kind of like with the RX-782 Gundam in terms of how it's going to look. And so even if you're a fan of the Zeta Gundam, you may not necessarily be a fan of the way that the perfect grade is designed, just in terms of the design aesthetics of that. So it's actually really close to the Master Grade, which came out around the same time, I believe. So that may explain why they look very similar. But in terms of the design, you may be more of a fan of the 2.0, which I think holds up still really well. The Zeta Verka is probably the overall best version of the Zeta Gundam that you can get. I would say the HGC Revive kit is also really, really nice if you don't mind the fact that it's a parts forming transformation. Fantastic kit. You know, it is an HG, so it's going to come with like the standard pros and cons that come along with that. There are a few stickers. And then of course there is the notorious real grade Zeta as well. I think the real grade Zeta looks fantastic. You just have to be really careful with it, especially if you're planning on transforming it. But if you don't care about transforming it, you should be perfectly fine. It's just a kit that you have to be very gentle with. If you are, I think the real grade actually is a really, really nice looking version of the Zeta Gundam. But because it's a serviceable release and doesn't have any major flaws, I'm going to put it next to the Gundam here. I'm kind of tempted to put it down further, but I would just put it up in the B tier just because of the fact that with the Gundam and the Zakus, you have an alternative in that large size. With the Zeta Gundam, you don't have, so far we don't have a mega size Zeta Gundam, and I kind of don't expect that we ever will, but if you wanted a large size Zeta Gundam, you just don't really have any other option other than the perfect grade. And like I said, it's pretty good. The surface detail on it is definitely a lot better than what we saw like with the RX-782 Gundam. But let's go ahead and move on then to the Wing Gundam Zero Custom, or the Wing Gundam Zero EW. This kit, this design has a lot of really great options available for you. Well, at least it has the Master Grade Verka, which is absolutely amazing. It has the Real Grade, which is also really, really good. We unfortunately still don't have any sort of like Revive HG yet, which would really be nice. But as far as the Perfect Grade goes, on like a personal note, this was the first Perfect Grade kit that I ever built, and I remember at the time really wanting it for a long time, and of course I had to save up my money for it because it's big and expensive, and I finally got it, and I honestly didn't really enjoy it that much. So the construction process on it, well, it left a little bit to be desired. Ultimately, it's the kind of kit that really should have come with a display stand, and that's something we're going to be talking about a lot as we get to like some more other releases here, because we did start to get display stands with some of the Perfect Grade kits, but that's kind of one of the things that I find to be my biggest dislike about the Perfect Grade kits, is that you kind of just can't really do a whole lot with them other than just having them stand there. They don't pose super well, even though they have a lot of articulation, a lot of like complex inner frame and moving joints and everything, but they're so big and heavy that you kind of can't really do a whole lot with them. And that's definitely the case with the Wing Zero. I'm going to put this in the C tier with the Zakus. I mean, it looks pretty nice just in terms of just like the design of it and the proportions and everything, but I think we've got a lot better versions available of this. The fact that it doesn't come with a stand means you can't put it up on a base and like display it properly. So a lot of potential there for this one, but unfortunately it just kind of ends up being just sort of meh. So that's why I feel like that's a good spot for that. Moving on to the Mark IIs then. So again, like with the Zakus, between the Mark II AEUG version, which came out first, and then the Titans version, which came out shortly after, As far as the parts go, there's no difference. So with the real grades actually hold up really quite well despite being early releases in the real grade line as well. But the Titans version actually did give us some extra parts, some different parts from the AEUG version. In terms of like the perfect grades, there's no difference in the parts. The only difference is just going to be the color, obviously, and then the decal markings. So Mark II is kind of in a very fortunate position in terms of its releases because its release in the perfect grade line kind of mirrors what happened later with the real grade line in that it's coming out a little bit later after the line's kind of a bit established, and so it has the opportunity to be like a better kit than the kits that came out before it. So I'm going to put both versions of the Mark II here in the B tier as well. Again, some nice open hatch gimmicks there for them, some pretty nice proportions and details and surface detail overall, and the fact that these actually do come with the full range of accessories, including the bazooka, which the Gundam didn't have, the Zaku's didn't have. So we finally got the beam rifle and the bazooka included with these, so that's really nice. If you did want anything smaller than the perfect grade, the Master Grade 2.0s are fantastic, and the HG Revive kits are also fantastic, and the RG is fantastic as well. Like I said, they're earlier releases in the RG lineup, but they hold up really, really well. All right, then moving on to the GP01. Now this one is an interesting one because I always feel like this is kind of like the last one before the perfect grade line kind of started to change a bit, because so far it's been pretty much entirely Universal Sentry with the exception of the Wing Gundam. And after the GP01 we get the Strike Gundam, and then there's a lot of Seed and 00 stuff, and it kind of changed for the better for sure. But the GP01 is kind of right in between, where it's very different just because of the fact that this is the first time where we have a perfect grade kit that you can make kind of two different versions of the kit within one box. So it's a big kit, it's an expensive kit for sure, because it also has the hanger display parts, which you can use to display the parts of the kit that you're not using, and so you can display like the armor parts and weapons and stuff on there to make it either as the GP01 Zephyranthes or as the full Burnin. And so I think the GP01, because of all that it had to offer, I'm going to put this in the A tier because it gave you more to work with. I think the open hatch gimmicks among like all of the perfect grade line, I think the GP01 is one of the best looking open hatch builds if you want to like build it and display it with all the hatches open, especially the full Burnin version, the way like the armor on the legs opens up and everything. I think that this kit looks really, really awesome. I think actually like the GP01, just the Zephyranthes on its own, if they would have released it like that, without the full Burnin parts, without the hanger parts, it would have been just kind of a little bit underwhelming, but I think it's because of the extra stuff that you get in there. It's going to add to the cost, but it certainly adds a lot of value to it. Now, in terms of other options that you have available, this is another reason to put it in the A tier, because unfortunately for the GP01 and the entirety of the GP series, you just don't really have a whole lot of good options. The HGUC kits are pretty dated, they're okay, but some nice Revive versions of the HG would be nice, and the Master Grade is really quite dated as well. We could really use a new Master Grade, and the real grade kits are actually really quite nice. So the real grade kits are ones that kind of have a little bit of a mixed reputation. I built both the real grades and I really, really enjoyed them a lot. I think they look absolutely fantastic. I believe, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe the real grades were based off of the Kotoki's design of them. And so the real grades look awesome. They can be a bit finicky, but again, if you're just careful with it, they're absolutely fine and they look really, really good. And until the day that we get any sort of Master Grade 2.0, you're kind of, if you want like a nice version of the GP01, you either have to go with the perfect grade or the real grade. So kind of like opposite ends of the size spectrum there. And so again, I will just say that I think it would make a whole lot of sense to get a Master Grade Verka release of the GP01 that's similar to the perfect grade, gives you the parts to make both the Zephyranthes and the full Burnin versions. That's what I think ultimately needs to happen and probably will happen. That's kind of what I'm betting on. I have no idea, but all right, now we're moving on into the world of Seed, because from now on we started to get a lot of Seed releases in the perfect grade line, starting with the Strike Gundam itself here. And so obviously we've got a lot of different great versions of the Strike Gundam. The HD Revive version, the entry grade are great in 1/44 scale. The real grade kind of not that much. In Master Grade, we have the Master Grade remastered version is really nice as well. And the perfect grade is interesting. It's often highly regarded as like one of the best perfect grade kits, and it is really nice. It just doesn't really have a whole lot. It's very bare bones because it doesn't include any of the striker packs. The Aile Strike and other striker packs we'll get to later on. Those will be later released. But just this kit on its own, it's very minimal. So the good point is that it's very cheap. It's very affordable compared to some of the other releases in the line, but you just don't really get a whole lot. You get the shield, you get the beam rifle, you get the knives, And that's about it. And still, to this point, we still don't have any sort of display base for it. So if you're getting this kit on its own, you're just gonna have to have it just standing there. You can pose it in different standing poses and kneeling poses and stuff like that, but you're not gonna be able to do any kind of aerial poses with this still yet. But the fact that it doesn't have the Aile strike pack on it anyway, I mean, you know, it's not gonna be flying around without that, but you could, in theory, you know, have it in like a cool like jumping pose or just some sort of like elevated pose as if it were in space or something like that would be nice, but no display base. So this one I'm gonna put in the B tier, and again, I think because of how much people really love the Perfect Grade Strike Gundam, there's probably gonna be some people disagreeing with me on that one, but another main reason is because we have the Perfect Grade Perfect Strike that we'll get to later on towards the end, which I think is just vastly superior. So anyway, next up, that brings us to the Skygrasper and Aile Striker set. Now, this is a very odd release. It's the only time we've ever got a release which is essentially just like an add-on pack. The Aile Striker itself, you know, is not really going to be like a Gundam anyway, or a mobile suit, I should say, because we do also have the Zakus in there, which the Zakus are the only non-Gundam mobile suit, and the Skygrasper is the only non-mobile suit. But the Skygrasper itself, I mean, unless you really wanted it, I mean, it doesn't really have that much to offer. It gives you the Aile Strike pack. Honestly, the Aile Strike pack just should have been included with the Strike Gundam from the start, and for whatever reason, they decided to release the Skygrasper as a separate set in the real grade line as well. I'm gonna put this in the C tier just because it's just, like I said, something that should have just been included with the Gundam. I'm tempted to almost even put it in the D tier, and I don't think that honestly we'll end up putting anything in the D tier, because in my opinion, I think probably the Zakus are probably the worst of the entirety of the Perfect Grade lineup. But the Skygrasper, I mean, like, I'm tempted just because of the fact that it's just such a bleh release. But that brings us to the Strike Rouge. So the Strike Rouge is basically what should have been the Aile Strike from the start. The difference with this one being, of course, the color and the decal markings, but this basically gives us the Strike Gundam and the Aile Strike pack. And not only that, which I guess I should have mentioned about the Skygrasper, the other good thing about the Skygrasper is the fact that it did give us an actual display stand. So for the first time, we had an actual display stand for a Perfect Grade kit. And I guess that is a good reason to keep it here in the C tier, maybe not move it up to the B tier, because again, I think they should have been packaged together, but definitely can stay in the C tier there just because we finally got an actual display stand that you can use to display the Gundam in an aerial pose. But with the Strike Rouge, this one I'm going to put up here with the GP01 in the A tier because it's an awesome kit, just because of the fact that it's like a more complete version of the Strike Gundam. You may not be a fan of the pink color scheme, but that can always be repainted. This is basically everything that was good about the Strike Gundam, and it fixes like the main negatives of the Strike Gundam, being the fact that it didn't come with any of the Striker packs. So this one kind of gives you everything that you could want in there. This one as well, we got some great options with the HG Revive version of this one. I believe there's a Revive version anyway. There is a version of the entry grade. And anyway, moving on to the Astray Red Frame, then the Astray Red Frame, basically, you can just kind of like copy and paste all of my commentary on the Strike Gundam. It's a really popular kit for sure, and it does kind of come with, in this case, like everything that you would expect. So it's got the katana, which is the main thing, which comes in that cool like plated silver, kind of chrome silver there for the sword blade. It's got the shield, it's got the beam rifle, so it does also have fantastic articulation thanks to it sharing the same base frame as the Strike Gundam. And so this is what I'm going to put here next to the Strike Gundam. I think, I'm not really sure whether I want to put this into the A or B tier, but again, I could just kind of feel like it's again just a bit underwhelming, just the fact that you just can't really necessarily do a whole lot with it, even though it is like really posable, but without it coming with a display stand, you're just going to be limited to just ground poses. And then plus the fact that you have the real grade, which is really nice. We have a lot of different versions of the master grade, which are really nice as well. So if you're a fan of the Astray, there's a lot of Astray kits out there. And you have a lot of great options for you. There even is the Astray Red Frame Kai, which did get a perfect grade release, but it was a limited release. But like if you really wanted a perfect grade Astray kit, that would be, you know, even more impressive because it has that big backpack on it with the huge sword. Then I would say maybe go for that perfect grade variation. But then we got the Gundam 00 Riser, which is the first of the releases from the 00 series here, of course. And this one I think I'm going to put here in the A tier just because of the fact that you have a lot of of stuff with this one, kind of similar to like with the GP01. It does give you a lot of stuff, and it does come with a display base because you have the base that you can use for either the O riser or like the full kit, the double O riser, kind of all combined. So you have a ton of different options in terms of all the different like GN weapons that it has and everything. Now, fortunately, if you didn't want something quite as big and as expensive as this kit, as this is one of the most expensive perfect grade kits because it's a big kit with a ton of stuff in there, there is the real grade, which is also fantastic, and there is the master grade, which is also really, really nice as well. I would even say that the high grade, with the, you know, the high grade 00 series being a little bit older and there being kind of some good ones and bad ones. I don't even want to say bad ones, but there being like kind of some mixed releases in the HG line, and just in terms of kind of the overall quality, the 00 riser is actually one of the better ones for sure. So you do have some great options for the 00 riser, but if you wanted like a big, nice display piece of the 00 riser, the perfect grade is really pretty nice. So all right, we didn't stay away from Seed for too long, as up next we're going back to Gundam Seed here for the Strike Freedom Gundam. Now the Strike Freedom Gundam, I'm going to just go ahead and just put that right here into the beat here, just because well, it's got some pros and cons. It's certainly very large. I believe it's the largest perfect grade with the wings extended, that, you know, the overall kind of dimensions make it the largest. But as cool as the wings are, and the fact that the Dragoons can come off, you don't have any way to display the Dragoons. It does come with a display stand, which is nice, but it's going to be very rudimentary. It doesn't have, you're not able to like really do much other than just have the Gundam elevated on the display stand, which is great for doing like these poses with it having kind of its wings all spread out and everything like that. So again, it makes for like a nice, decent display piece, but the main kicker is just the fact that we have a much, much better version available in the MGEX. The MGEX is just going to be, you know, expensive, but, you know, a comparable price. It's smaller, but it has a lot more plated parts, so that's where you kind of have a balance of with these being kind of similarly priced. And between the two, you know, the MGEX is not going to be as large as the PG, but I think it's just overall just drastically a better kit. There's so much more that you can do with it. The details are even more impressive, and you just get so much more with the MGEX. And so there's really not kind of too much reason to buy the perfect grade unless you wanted just a really big version of the Strike Freedom. And so pretty nice kit, pretty impressive looking kit, especially if you can manage to find the version that comes with like the mirror plate like display base for it. That was like a limited release kind of thing. Actually, I ended up getting that when I got this kit way back when, but I don't have it anymore. And at the time, I don't think I even knew that it was like a limited thing. I just figured that they all came with that. Only later did I find out that that was actually something that was a limited release. But that's it for the Seed kits for now as well. We had a little bit of a time break going from the Strike Freedom releasing in 2010, and then it was 4 years till the next perfect grade release in 2014 with the Unicorn Gundam. Now the Unicorn Gundam is really, really nice in that it's a nice big version of the Unicorn Gundam. It's fully transformable. It introduced the Destroy Mode Unleashed, kind of a whole other like kind of third transformation sort of, or kind of like a 1.5, what would it be? It would be, so it has the Unicorn mode, Destroy mode, and then Destroy mode Unleashed, Unchained anyway. So it's fully transformable. The transformation is nicer than what we had like with the Master Grade. And now with it being a 160 scale, Bandai felt confident in putting a full LED system into it. And the LED system is great, but it's very expensive. So it's an already expensive kit, and then once you add the LED system into that, it just makes it even more expensive. So unfortunately, this one is going to be really, really expensive, but once it's all built and with the LED unit installed, it's a super impressive looking kit. I'm gonna put this in the A tier for sure. As my biggest gripe with this kit is that even though it comes with a display stand, which works well for turning on the LED system, you can only like raise the arm of it only a little bit. And I think one of the reasons is just because of the wiring for it, because otherwise you'd have to like stretch out the wiring, whatever. Basically, you would just have to have a longer wire. I guess it's not that big of a deal, but because it's very large and particularly very heavy kit, posing this kit's quite difficult. Even though you can get it elevated, it's only going to be elevated a little bit, and you're still going to be kind of limited in terms of what you can do with this kit. It's just so heavy. There's not really a whole lot that you can do with it. That said, all you really kind of have to do is put the LED unit into it and put it in Destroy mode and have it displayed like that, and it's a really, really impressive looking kit. Now we do have a lot of great versions available with this, just like with the Strike Freedom. We also have the MGEX. Ultimately, I would say the MGEX is probably the best version of the Unicorn that you can get. it is really expensive, and it is at the moment probably going to be hard to find as it hasn't been reprinted for a little bit. But if you wanted to just get one version of the Unicorn only, I would say get the MGEX. That said, the perfect grade is fantastic. The real grade is also really nice as well, but you do have to be, again, with the transforming gimmick built into the 1/44 scale, you have to be a little bit kind of careful with it. But the real grade is really solid, and I actually really like the high grade as well. The high grade is not transformable, but if you only really cared about having it in destroy mode or unicorn mode, then I would say definitely also look into maybe getting the high grade. It's a very affordable option, and it looks fantastic. The design, the proportions of the HG are nothing to scoff at. So obviously shortly after the Unicorn, we did get the Banshee as well, which I'm just going to go ahead and put right next to the Unicorn here, because it's basically everything that I just said about the Unicorn also applies to the Banshee. The Banshee does have a flaw that the Unicorn didn't have, in that the Banshee introduced the Armed Armor DE, which is awesome and it looks really cool. It's this huge shield that it has, but it's even more of a weight issue than anything that the Unicorn had. So the Banshee Norn, I should specify, the Banshee Norn with its Armed Armor DE shield, it's just so heavy, you can't really have the shield raised up really well without modifying the joints, either doing something to basically just strengthen the joint. It's not a huge deal, but if it's something that is going to make you do kind of like extra work to get it, again, to be able to do a pose, this is a kit that I did find a little bit difficult to pose just because of the weight issues that it had. But again, super impressive looking kit when it's all said and done. Unfortunately, we don't have an MGEX of the Banshee yet, and I would imagine that we maybe will at some point. I would hope so, but at least for the time being, your best other option for the Banshee would probably, again, either be HG or RG. For that. Now we're back to Gundam 00 here with the Exia. So the Exia was released for the 20th anniversary of the Perfect Grade line, as well as the 10th anniversary of Gundam 00. I'm gonna put the Exia in S tier. The Exia is actually probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, among the Perfect Grade line for a couple of reasons. So number one is for the LED system in this one is even more impressive than I think with the Unicorn. It is also once again going to be very expensive, and although it was released originally as a set with the lighting model, I don't believe that that set has been continued to be reissued. It's more so been released as separate sets now. You have to buy the LED unit and the actual model kit separately, but this is a model kit that I would absolutely recommend getting the LED unit. It's going to add a lot to the cost overall, but like I said, it's one of my favorite perfect grades out there for sure. And a lot of that is just due to the fact that it's not quite as huge as something like the Unicorn Gundam is a quite like large Gundam. The Exia is not quite as big. It's a little bit more kind of thin down, a little bit more streamlined of a design, and the display base that it has actually allows you to have the Gundam much higher up off the base to be able to pose. This is, I think, like the most posable perfect grade kit. So if you wanted a perfect grade kit that you can actually display in like a cool display like action pose, the Strike Rouge is a pretty good option. Otherwise, the Exia, I would say, is the best option among the perfect grade line if you wanted a kit that can do cool poses, especially poses elevated up off the ground, right? So the Exia, really cool, super impressive kit for just the different lighting modes that it's got there that you can switch between, and just an absolutely fantastic looking version of the Exia. So you do have the Master Grade kit, which I think is really nice. I think it still holds up really quite well. A lot of people want a 2.0 of that, and I would say a 2.0 Exia would be nice, but you know, in lieu of a 2.0, I think the just Master Grade 1.0 still holds up pretty well. You know, people complain about the feet, and there is a little bit of an issue in terms of like the way that the feet are designed on the MG, but if you just put it up on an action base, then it doesn't matter anyway. The HG is also really pretty nice, still holds up really well, and the Exia Real Grade kit also still holds up very well as well. So you do have some good options, but I would say the perfect grade is very, very nice. Now we have the W-Gundam 7 Swords G. This one I'm gonna also put in the B tier below the W Riser for the main reason that it just kind of went too overboard with these huge weapons that you needed a separate display stand just for displaying the weapons, which for me, I absolutely hate when I need to use a second display stand just for the weapon. I mean, but if you really like the fact that this has, you know, huge weaponry included with it, then, you know, it's a pretty cool looking kit, I guess. But I gotta say, all things considered, you know, it's just as nice as the W Riser, but it just with the negative of just having the weapons that are just kind of too big. So I don't know. Maybe it should be here in the A tier, you know, together with the double riser, but I'm just going to put that down there. And then that brings us to the last couple of ones here with the perfect grade strike, perfect strike. It's always like difficult to say for me. The perfect strike. I'm going to put the perfect strike also here in the S tier. So basically this is the best version of the strike. So we had the original Strike Gundam, the Strike Rouge, which is even better, and you can kind of see how they go. Like I put the original Strike in B tier just because it like didn't come with enough. The Strike Rouge, it came with more stuff, which was great, which made the kit even better. S tier for the perfect strike because it comes with even more stuff. But not only that, not only the fact that this comes with all of the stuff for the perfect strike, but the most important thing for me was the fact that this came with new armor and new parts for just the base Strike Gundam. So the new armor parts gave us some better details and better proportions to the kit overall. And so I think they drastically improved just the base kit, and then also the fact that it has all the extra stuff on there as well. So the Perfect Strike, I think, is a really, really super nice kit and gives you a lot of fantastic options there. You don't have to display it as the Perfect Strike. If you don't like it with, with all that stuff on it, you can display it just as the Launcher Strike or just as the Sword Strike, or just stick to just the Aile Strike if you want. You can give those other parts to, if you have any of the other perfect grades, they're all compatible. So you can spread those extra parts around if you have multiple different versions of the perfect grade strike. But anyway, this kit kind of comes with everything that you could possibly want, and the fact that they improved upon an already really great perfect grade Strike Gundam with the new parts. I think they did a fantastic job on this one. Definitely one I would recommend. Again, though, it's going to be one of the more expensive ones in the line for sure, just because it comes with a lot. And that brings us to the last one here, which is a part of the Perfect Grade Unleashed line. So a little bit unfair for this one because it is like Perfect Grade Unleashed. It's supposed to be sort of like even better, even more than the regular Perfect Grade line. So obviously this one's going to go in S tier here as well, just because of everything that it had to offer. But I will say a huge caveat with this one is that I really think that Bandai should have included some kind of display stand for the Perfect Grade Unleashed. It's for how much they really wanted to put into this. They wanted to make it have, a super complex layered inner frame with different, metallic colors. They included stuff like photo etch parts, like the 3D stickers, and they just went like way over the top on everything that was included with this one, except it doesn't come with water slide decals, and it doesn't come with a display stand. So, I mean, I don't know, I just find it ridiculous that Bandai would, try to make this as like the ultimate release of the RX-782 Gundam, with it just, having all this like peak Bandai technology in there, and then not have a display stand to be able to show it off in like, more dynamic aerial poses. I get it for like most, I don't even know if it's like even most, but for a lot of the original series, yeah, the Gundam was on Earth. And so just doing like, poses on the ground, it's fine, and it poses really nicely. My other gripe with the Perfect Grade Unleashed is just the fact that I think that they should have made an entirely new LED unit for this. Basically, they reused an LED unit which is made for, kits that are this big in a kit that's this big, and the LED unit is just, I didn't find it to be just bright enough for this. And it looks okay if the lights are off, you can notice it, but it would have been nice to have like a brand new LED unit designed specifically for this Gundam, or specifically for this kit rather. It also has the LED in the beam saber, which is a kind of cool gimmick, but you may be wondering, well, if there's all these different things that I'm listing that are things that I didn't like about the release, why is it an S tier? Well, it's just because it's just, even despite those flaws, it's still just such a nice build. It's such an enjoyable build. It's such a good looking kit. Overall, that it kind of really just can't put this in anything other than S tier, I feel like. But there are things that I wish would have been included with the kit. There are things that I would have done differently had I been in charge of designing the release of this kit, but still an absolutely fantastic kit. I love the fact that this also introduced fixed pose hands for a perfect grade kit. I know the articulated hands is something a lot of people like, but as you guys know, it's something that I absolutely do not care for at all. I always prefer just fixed pose hands, and this one just means that the hands, we had some really nice hand options included. So if they would have given us just like 2 set of fixed pose hands, just like weapon holding hands and closed fist or something, it would have been kind of disappointing. But because we had like a nice full set of hand options, it also allowed them to include even some of like the silver parts that go on like inside the hands, so you get those nice like silver details even like through some of the different bits there in the fingers and all that. So just absolute like peak Bandai technology with this one, but there is some things that I wish would have been included. So that's my tier list here for perfect grade kits. What do you guys think? think? Where would you disagree? Like I said, this is not anything really too scientific. And again, like I said, I've not built a lot of these. So I'm just kind of going off of just, years of experience of seeing them a lot and hearing from other people about them and just kind of being generally familiar with a lot of these releases, having built maybe about half. So you guys are probably going to have some disagreements with me as far as the placement of some of these, but let me know in the comments. Are there any of these that you would have put into D tier? I ended up not really putting anything in D tier. I feel like just the 4 tiers really kind of serviced us pretty well here, but you could probably rearrange this a little bit. I'm not sure, what I might have put down at the very bottom, maybe the Zaku's, I guess, but considering the placement of everything else, I feel pretty confident in this. But you guys can let me know where you would have differing opinions. And as always, if you want to check out some perfect grade Gunpla or any other type of Gunpla, you can check out the link in the video description to US at Gundam store. Got all sorts of great stuff there on the website for you guys to check out. And as always, thanks so much for all of your support, leaving a like and making sure that you're subscribed if you're not subscribed. Thank you so much, guys. Till next time, have a good one. Later.